Welcome to Money Chic, Financial Education with Shari Rash, the podcast that's here to empower you with the knowledge and skills you need to master your personal finances and live your best financial life. I am joined today by Jennifer Arthurton. As soon as I heard about and learned about Jennifer, I said, I have to speak with her. She has such a unique story and powerful story that I'm certain you're going to enjoy learning about today. But she is the creator of Old Chicks No Shit, a podcast and community designed to support and inspire midlife women creating their kick-ass next chapter. Jennifer is a former Fortune 500 corporate executive turned speaker, podcast host, leadership coach, and passionate advocate of the power of midlife women. And what's so fascinating and what really sparked Jennifer's new journey is in the year leading up to her 50th birthday, Jennifer found herself divorced, an unemployed corporate executive, an empty nester, and bedridden with a stress-related illness. Every identity that defined who she was in the world was taken away from her, and she realized that she had no idea who she was or what she wanted for her life. After throwing a big old pity party, Jennifer realized that in spite of the cultural narrative that 50 is the beginning of the end, she had a 30 to 40-year chapter ahead of her that she could create a life she loved on her terms. Jennifer set off on a spiritual and personal development journey that led to the creation of the Old Chicks No Shit community to inspire and support midlife women in chasing their dreams and creating their kick-ass next chapter. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I wanted to, your story, I think it's unique in the fact that so many things happen to you in a short period of time, but it's not uncommon that all of us face what happened to you over a period of our lives.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So why do you think women allow outside factors and some things we don't have 100% control of, our career, our marriage, right? We have some control, but not 100% control.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we allow these things define ourselves?
Yeah. I mean, so we live in a culture that has conditioned women to see their value in what we do for other people, right? Like to find our value in things outside of ourselves. So it's, what we do for other people, our kids, our careers, taking care of our families, being good daughters, good wives, good mothers, all those things, right? We also have been taught to see our value in our body, our physical body, right? Is my body pleasing to somebody outside of myself? And then our ability to have kids. So all of our frame of reference is outside of us, right? Like that's where our value in the world lies. And so when either, you're entering a new chapter of your life, or like in my case, what I call my midlife crisis, right? Mm-hmm. When all of that is stripped away from you, if you've never actually connected with yourself, you have no idea who you are. And, in my case, I was like, if I'm not a wife, if I'm not a mother, if I'm not a corporate executive, and at the time I was like big time into physical fitness, right? If I can't do all of those things, then who am I? Like, where is my value in the world? Where do I belong? Right? At the time, I couldn't see those were roles I played and things I did, but those are not who I am. And that was actually what set me off on the journey, was to be like, okay, well, who is the woman underneath all of the things that I did?
You're so right. And often I think about, today's the day after Valentine's Day.
Yep.
And my family and we sat around and we gave everyone compliments. And the compliments coming back to me was, you put everyone before yourself, it's right. And all these things. And you think of everyone else. And although that I appreciated that they appreciate the things I do, you're right. A woman's value sometimes is seen as what we can do for other people or the value we add to a situation. So that's so true.
Yeah. And unfortunately, we can't help it, right? Like we've never been taught otherwise, like for most of us. And I think this is especially true for women, like we're handed the rules of the game really early on. Right. So it's like, be a good girl, get good marks in school, go to a good college, get a good job, work your way up the corporate ladder, stop in there and, get married and have kids and live in a nice picket house. Right. And so, we're going through life doing all the things that we think we should be doing. But like, and I realized that in my case, I kept questioning, like, how did I end up here? Like, I did everything right. Like, I followed all of the rules. I checked all of the boxes. How did I end up here? And I realized after a period of time is because I was following the rules that were given to me, but nowhere did I actually check in and go, is this what you want? Is this making you happy? And in the last maybe 5 years of my career, that I invested a lot in, I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish in my career, but I would find myself in a boardroom, kind of half listening to a meeting and thinking to myself, is this it? Like, is this all there is? Because I had worked so hard to get there. Right. And then I reached the top of the mountain and I'm like, oh crap. Yeah, this is it. I still feel like I have a hole. Like, you know what I mean? Am I happy? Because I never checked in to see if that was if I was climbing the right mountain.
So do you think that's what the missing piece is? The gut checks after these major 100%. Or before you achieve the life milestones or as you're on the way, doing these gut checks and going, is this fulfilling? Do you feel like you're getting what you need to?
Yeah. I mean, 90% of the women who end up in my community, who are my coaching clients, come to me because they're feeling stuck. And they're feeling stuck because they become disconnected from themselves. So, that little voice that's always talking to us, if we are not listening and paying attention to it, it just gets smaller and smaller and smaller until eventually it just goes away. And the answer to all of the questions that we have live inside us, but we're so busy and there's so much noise in the outside world that we can't hear our own voice. Right. And so being connected with yourself and what's important to you, as equally as important as what you do for other people, is so critical, because if you are aligned with yourself, if you check in with yourself and you're connected with what you want, when something's not going right, you'll know it before you get too far down the path.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And since this is a money podcast, I do have to talk about every life phase. Money is involved in it, right?
Yeah.
Good things, bad things. Every kid's getting older, as we get older, we retire. Everything has money involved. So a lot of your major life challenges or hurdles or what you faced had a financial impact, right?
Sure.
So how did all of those things make you feel financially? Were you in charge of your finances before these events happened, or were you trying to then catch up and learn all of it?
Yeah. I was very well paid in my career, very well paid for what I did. And that was, in fact, one of the things that kind of, every time I would kind of ask that question, am I happy? Like, what else is there? You know what I mean? I would come back to, but I'm paid really, really well for what I do. And I was very, very attached to that money, right? Because and in a large part, like my job title and how much money I made was a little bit of also part of the definition of who I was, right? And so, it was too good to give up. And it was funny because even after I left the corporate world, like people would say to me, like, where else are you ever going to make that amount of money again? Like, it's, you know what I mean? Because my only frame of reference for where I could access money was through a corporate job. So when I ended up no longer having my career available to me, money was absolutely a huge fear that I had. Like, I was a 50-year-old woman without a husband, without a job, again, our culture tells us that I should be riding off into the retirement sunset, on the arm of a handsome man with a pot of gold under my arms. And I was like, yikes, that's not my reality. And I truly believed that I was going to become this old spinster cat lady living on the street, because like, how was I going to support myself? Where was my money going to come from? Right. But it was because the only place I knew that I could access money was through corporate. And when I decided that that was no longer what I wanted to do with my life, absolutely, money was a huge fear, a huge, huge fear. But one of the things that I did is, when I started thinking about what's next, I went out and had coffee with as many different people from as many different walks of life as I could possibly find, to figure out like, okay, how are other people making money? Like, what are the jobs that they are doing? And it was eye-opening because first of all, people were doing things I'd never even heard of. People were making money in ways I didn't even think were possible, because my whole circle, my whole frame of reference were people who looked and thought and did the same jobs as me. So that's all I knew that was possible. So opening the door to other ideas, or to having these conversations with people, opened my mind to, oh, okay, there are possibilities for money beyond that. But yeah, it was absolutely a huge source of fear for me.
Absolutely. I mean, especially if your whole career, you were paid a salary, you were told your compensation, and there could be other factors, a part of your compensation and bonuses and all of that, but it's pretty predictable. You know what to expect. So then to lose that and then enter a field where it's not predictable, right? And then you're eating what you kill, and then also reinventing yourself at the same time with in your personal life. That had to have just been a huge mindset shift for you as well.
Massive mindset shift for me, and to be clear, like when I left my corporate career, I did have a package, and I did have, some savings, and some investments and things like that. But I also knew that those things were not going to last forever. So, the pity party that you spoke with, that was funded. The pity party was taken care of. But I also knew, so the other part is, there was money. Money was a huge fear, but there was also a part of me was like, there's so much more that I want to do. There's so much more that I want to experience. There's so much more I have left to give to the world, right? Like that has to be of some kind of value. Like all of the experience that I have has to be of some kind of value. So how do I then turn that into value? But the mindset shift was like so critically important, because one thing I knew is that if I wanted my life to be different, I had to show up differently in it. And, we can't see ourselves. Like they say, you can't read the label from inside the jar. So I hired a coach at the very beginning, because I was like, okay, I obviously can't see the things that I can't see, because here I am in this place that I'm not super happy with right now. Yeah. And I wanted somebody to be able to hold me accountable and to show me the things that I couldn't see, and, to push me out of my comfort zone a little bit. But the mindset shift, and I think this is true for so many of us, right? Like we think of ourselves in a certain way. Like we put ourselves in little boxes. So I'm an accountant. I'm a this, or I'm just a that, right? And then we build our whole life like around that box. But when you actually get to know who you are outside of the labels and titles, you find that there's all these other dimensions to you, right? That allows you to kind of expand the frame of the box. So, while I did, marketing and product development was my career, and that was the box I put myself in. When I started expanding out of that box, I found all of these other parts of me that, that needed to be expressed, like that were coming out of me as desires. And then it was about, okay, how do I then create value in the world based on these other things that I have to give to the world? Because again, we're usually surrounded by people who look, think, and talk and do exactly what we do, right? And that's who we become, right? Like, what is it? They say you become the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
That's right. Yeah. Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you were getting coffee with people of all different walks of life. You threw yourself a pity party, which I think is so important, because you have to acknowledge the losses, right? You can't just pull yourself up by the bootstraps the next day and you have to acknowledge it and accept that your life is changing in different ways. So what other steps did you take to move you out of those phases? And did you address each of your losses simultaneously or as they were happening? Because again, your life changed so drastically.
Yeah, what a great question that is. So the answer to that question is I didn't address them properly at the time, and then they all came out at one time, right? So I remember going through my divorce and, being in my career. And I told not one single solitary soul in my office what was happening in my life, because I didn't want them to see me as less capable, like that I couldn't handle my stuff, right? So, I would put on my game face and I would go to work, but, I would close my office door and I'd cry a few tears and then I'd open the door and I have my game face on and I'd go about my business. So I was kind of stuffing down a lot of stuff. And then, even like the loss of, like my marriage, my health was failing at this point. Like I was totally burnt out, my daughter leaving home, like all of that kind of stuff. I was so busy trying to put on the brave face that I actually wasn't dealing with it. So when I got to this place of like that, all of the things that had kept me busy, like I'm a very go type A kind of person. When all of the things that kept me busy were no longer available to me, I was kind of forced into this place of stillness. And once I got to that place of stillness is where everything started to come up. And that pity party that I talk about, like you just mentioned, was actually a huge amount of grief just coming to the surface. And I tried to fight it for a very long time because I'm like, no, just put on your big girl pants and go. But I recognized, about halfway through, I'm like, okay, I can't control this anymore. Like, I just have to let all of this come out. And so I would lie on my bed staring up at the ceiling and just, letting it go. And that was an important part of the process because it was clearing space for what was to come next. And you have to empty out the old gas before you can put the new gas in to make the car go. And so that was a really, really important part of the process. And then, I was asking myself like, okay, well, who am I? And I started to pay attention for the first time really ever to that little voice inside me. Like, what does she want? And started building a relationship with that person. So, some days it would be as simple as I want oranges. So I would go to the store and I would buy oranges and eat them. Like, at the time I was so physically burnt out that I couldn't go for very long walks, but I would walk across the street to the park, across from my house. And I would sit under the tree and just be, like literally just be, not do, which for me was a very, very strange and uncomfortable
Yes,
thing,
it is. It's
right?
very, very odd. Yes.
But I forced myself to sit there in the discomfort, in this quiet. And as I did that, I started to be able to hear, my own voice. And, one of the things that started coming to me was, you should write. And I was like, but I'm not a writer. Like, I'm not a good writer, right? I do strategy. I don't write things. But I just was like, okay, if this is what's being asked of me now, I'm just going to do it. And I started writing. And then that writing is what turned into a blog. And I remember the first blog post that I ever did, I had to sit on my hands for 3 days afterwards to not go back and delete it because I was like, why am I putting all my stuff out there for the world? But the beautiful part about what happened in that is that, I was feeling very alone. Like I was looking around going, why is everybody else's life just going along merrily and I cannot keep my crap together, right? Like it's all falling apart. But as I started publishing some of the experiences that I was having, other women were reaching out and saying, oh yeah, me too. I get it. Like I feel that. And I started to realize, I'm like, oh my goodness, I am actually not alone in this. It's like the thing that we're all experiencing in this transitional, and it's a very transitional part of life. Right. But we just weren't talking about it. We were all trying to make it look like a pretty package on the outside. And it opened the door to conversations, which then, led to the podcast and led to, my coaching business that I have now.
I think that's just so fascinating because we're taught how to prepare for something, or we're, like you said in the beginning, be a good girl, get good grades, go to school, get a good job, get married, get the house. And then we're not taught what to do with it, right? What routes, once we do that, it's like, okay, check the box, you did it. But it's like, wait, I'm going to be in this for a really long time, these phases of my life. But then we're also not taught when we have to undo it, right? We undo the career. We spent all of this schooling and all of this time preparing in this career that we've built up. And we're told, well, now you have a career. Now you have to save for retirement. And it's like, especially when I work with younger clients, I'll say, this sounds crazy. Congratulations. You got your first big boy, big girl job. Now let's start saving for when you don't have that job. And it's like, what? I just worked so hard to get it. Yeah. But we're taught now we have to save for retirement. You got the career, but you're going to have to financially prepare for the one day you don't have it. But no one teaches us how to mentally prepare. And I find I have so many clients that I give them the gold stamp. You can do it. You can retire, go ahead. and they can't do it. They want to, but they can't because we're not taught how to not do all the things we're supposed to do. We're not taught how to undo it.
Yeah. Well, I think change is hard for people because there's so much comfort in doing things the same way we've always done them, right? And as human beings, we tend to think the unknown is worse than the known. Like, we will always, like when there's a 50-50 chance that the unknown could be better than what we know, we will always choose what we know because we think the unknown is going to be worse. And so like relinquishing a bit of control over our lives and the things that we do day to day and the things that define us, it's like, oh my goodness, I'm going to be floating out there with no purpose, when the reality is when you let go and just allow yourself to be, you discover different parts of yourself, different things maybe that you want to explore. Maybe it's a hobby, maybe it's a new career, maybe it's, taking care of your grandkids, but you get to now, flip the script and create life on your terms, especially if you've built that financial foundation, right? Like now it's on your terms. What do you want? And I say this to women all the time, like, this is actually like midlife is the most powerful point in our lives yet. And I say that because first of all, we have amassed all of this, knowledge and experience and wisdom, which is incredibly valuable, right? And all of the energy that we have expended on taking care of everybody else, our careers and all of this kind of stuff, we can now reclaim that and put it towards something that feels meaningful and important to us. And so, the women in my community and the women in my mastermind, these are like midlife women who are doing like incredible things, like starting businesses, charitable work, starting charities, even, tackling physical challenges, because these are things that are important to them. And very rarely are these women driven by, I want to amass millions of dollars and become famous. Most of what's driving them is a sense of purpose, is a passion. And that is so incredibly powerful. So, being able to go inward and figure out, okay, what is that thing that lights me up? Like what makes me really happy? Like what sets my soul on fire? And then direct your time and your energy towards that. Like, honestly, I believe midlife women will change the world.
And so you seek to reinvent middle age. That is what on your website, reading about you, that's what you seek to do. So if someone were to come to you and pretty much say, I feel like I've lost my identity. I don't know who I am. I've poured all of who I am into other things. Where do you even start? Is it going to get oranges and sitting under the tree? What's step one of all of this? And it's really in any phase of our lives, if we're just trying to create something in it like bigger than ourselves or to fulfill ourselves, how do we even start this?
Yeah. The very first step is to reconnect with yourself, right? Because like what is going to drive you forward is going to come from inside you, right? And so there are three things that I say to all of the women that I work with are silence, stillness, and solitude. And, these don't have to be like big undertakings that we do. It could be, spending 15 minutes with yourself, having coffee, with no phone, no book, no TV or anything before the rest of your house gets up. And then just tune in and ask yourself questions like you would, another person. It's like, well, what would you like to do today? How are you feeling? What feels good right now? What needs attention right now? Right. And start building that connection with yourself. Because like I said earlier, the answer to all the questions we have is inside of us. And we just need to be able to turn down the volume a little bit on the outside so that we can hear what's happening on the inside. And, I so often hear women who so first of all, our dreams and desires are not random. Like they're not just random things. I truly believe that they are parts of us that are wanting to be expressed. And especially like, as we get on in life and, the demands are maybe less than they were in the earlier days, right? Like all of a sudden those desires might start to come to the surface again because there are parts of us that are like, hey, I'd like some attention, please. And I hear women, like one of the things that I do with in my group coaching is I make the women come in and they have to speak their desires out loud. And there are sometimes women, and I see this often, who will come in with this like little seed of an idea and they're like, oh, well, it's just this stupid little thing, blah, 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 blah. But I make them speak it out loud. And I remember very distinctly this one woman who, did the same thing. It was like, oh, this dumb little idea. She laid it out in front of the group of women. And then she said, see, it's kind of really stupid. And I said to her, wait a minute. Can you just look at the faces of the other women in this group that you just said that idea to? They were all very moved by it. And it was like the first time that had ever come out of her mouth. It was this thing in her head, but it took one step into reality because she shared it with this group of supportive women. Right. And in that instant, she saw it as being real and she started taking steps towards it. But otherwise, but there are these things that are in all of our heads. Yes. You know what I mean? They're in there somewhere. And it's just like, if we can just tune in enough, and I tell everybody, you take the tiniest possible step in the direction that you want to go. So if you want 20 minutes of meditation, start with one and work your way up from there. Like if it's going for a walk in nature, it's just like running a marathon, right? Like you can't go out and run the whole marathon the first day. You make tiny little things. And then before you know it, you're running, the whole distance. But, we tend to be very all or nothing in our thinking. I'm either doing it or not doing it. And the reality is that any big change, any transition happens in tiny, tiny steps that add up to big things.
Yeah. And that's so true. And we're usually our harshest critic. And when most women that have an idea, and I was thinking in my head, oh, this stupid idea, right before you said it. But no one else said that. But so why are we? Why is it okay for us to call our ideas stupid or what we're thinking stupid when it likely isn't? It probably is a good idea. Yeah. And if we are more open to those little thoughts we have in our head, life transitions may not feel as bad. Retiring may not be as scary. Yeah. Being an empty nester may not be as scary because we're embracing some ideas in our head that we might have been stifling for all of that time, but embracing them and having another identity or another focus.
Exactly.
This has been so awesome speaking with you. I think you're doing amazing work and really, more women need to hear about you, especially those that are feeling a little bit lost right now, feeling like my life is changing and I have no control over it. So how can others find you, get in touch with you, learn more, and hear you speak more?
Yeah. So I'm on Old Chicks No Shit on all of the social platforms. So Instagram and Facebook. I'm also on LinkedIn, and that's Old Chicks KNOW, which could also be NO, but it's KNOW. And there's the podcast of the same name. And you can also go to my website, which is the same name as well. So all of those places you can find me at oldchicksnoshit.com.
Fantastic. And I love embracing old, right? We're lucky if we can be old. Right? Every year we're luckier and luckier. So embracing old is okay because we're still here and we're doing awesome things. So,
Exactly.
Yes. Well, Jennifer Arthurton, thank you so much for joining me today. And I look forward to seeing all the awesome things that you do.
Thank you so much for having me.
Ever wondered how to secure your financial future? Introducing Financial Foundations, the ultimate financial planning program. Take control of your money, plan for the future, and build a secure financial foundation. Join us on a journey to financial freedom. Visit greenwaywealthadvisory.com today to start your path to a brighter financial future.